wonderful world of Disney. Nosey, the sweetest skunk in the West.
Well, it all started because Ben Walker was a nature painter. He wasn't rich yet or famous, and so home, for now at least, was an old house trailer in the Red Rock country of Arizona, where he lived with his daughter, Kim. Her mother had died when Kim was very young, and by now, she was used to being on her own most of the time, especially during the summer, what with Dad being hard at work and school being out.
I like it.
Huh? So do I. I'm afraid it's not going to be much of a summer vacation for you, Kim.
Oh, sure it is.
Well, between now and the art show, I'm going to be pretty busy. We'll get out of town maybe once a week, pick up mail and water, things like that. But the rest of the time, it's going to be pretty lonely.
I'll find lots to do. Really, Dad. Don't worry.
Okay, I won't. Don't go wandering off now, though. I don't want you to get caught in a flash flood.
Hey, really? Could there really be one?
Sure. Just take a look up there.
Of course, even desert plants needed life-giving moisture. But the desert was a place of extremes. And sometimes, nature's answer to not enough water was too much. Without time to soak into the ground, the water gathered into little rivulets, which soon grew into torrents and began a long journey down the canyons, often ending many miles from the storm itself. These flash floods come so suddenly that almost anything caught in their path is in real trouble. Next morning dawned clear and sunny, and Ben was hard at work doing a study of a quail that had nested in a nearby cactus. With her usual morning chores done, Kim took her hiking gear and set out to see what the storm had done to their desert neighborhood.
Well, hello.
Of course, it hadn't had any effect on the horned owl. He was just as suspicious as ever. Kim had never seen the desert look so green or so full of wildlife. But she knew that even though the flood had revived the desert, that was only part of the story. Most animals would benefit from it, but surely some had been trapped or swept away. It was beautiful country, but it could also be cruel.
Well, hi. All by yourself? You're kind of young to be all alone. Where's your mother? Guess I'm gonna have to take you home.
Now, even a baby skunk has scent glands that are loaded with live ammunition. So bringing one home to a house trailer was kind of a chancy proposition. But right at the moment, Kim couldn't figure out what else to do with him.
Dad? Hey, Dad!
Kim didn't know anything about taking care of skunks, so for the time being, she'd just park him somewhere while she found a box for him to sleep in. Although right now, sleep was what he was interested in the least. As a matter of fact, he seemed to have some ambitions of growing up to be a bottle brush. Now Kim had another problem she had to face up to, telling her father. He loved all kinds of animals, but a skunk?
Now you stay there for a while.
The skunk kitten had had a cold and frightening night, but he'd slept in Kim's arms all the way here. And now he was wide awake and ready for some serious exploring. His first adversary turned out to be a pushover. And after that, there was nothing to be afraid of, and no end of interesting nooks and crannies to get into. Ben Walker had always been a weekend painter, but he'd given himself a year till the end of this summer to make it as a full-time professional, or go back to the city in his old job.
Easy, girl. That's it.
Dad?
Something?
I'll tell you later.
Now, generally, skunks are known for not getting into mischief. But this young fellow was determined to do his best just the same. Obviously, with a skunk around the house, Kim was going to have a few extra chores to do. The first one, she soon found out, was just keeping track of him. Then there was feeding him. Even though she had learned to cook at the age of 6, it didn't help her as a dietitian for an orphan skunk. But a few leftovers and a nice fresh peach seemed like a reasonable first try. Fortunately, the skunk thought it was reasonable too.
Hey, Skunk. That's not much of a name, is it? You've got to have a name. Or how about Nosey? Would you like that?
And so Nosey it was. But by late afternoon, Kim still hadn't gotten up the nerve to tell her father about him. One thing she was sure of, though, he was going to have to sleep outside. After all, there were only so many chances you could take with a skunk, even a baby.
Come back here.
At first, he seemed to have some objection to trading in that big house for such a small one.
Get on in there now.
Finally, though, he had to give up. It had been a long day after all. He had a name and a house and a new friend, and now he was just about ready for a nap. So that was one problem solved. Now all Kim had to do was tell her father. But before long, the moon was up and the lights in the trailer were on, and she still hadn't told him. Like all his kind, Nosey was a nocturnal animal. And after his nap, he was ready for a little exercise.
There goes the owl.
Uh-huh. About ready for a night's hunting, I guess.
What do owls eat?
Oh, rats, snakes, things like that.
He wouldn't go after a baby skunk, would he?
Oh, sure.
Hey, get out of there.
Kim, what's the matter?
Nosey, are you okay?
Friend of yours?
Uh-huh.
Maybe he'd better spend nights indoors. At least till he gets a bit bigger. Take care of himself, huh?
So that night, Kim slept contentedly. And after getting over his fright, so did Nosey. But nothing would ever be quite the same again for either of them. A few days later, Ben hooked up the trailer and the whole family, Nosey included, took off on what Ben called a working vacation. But he and Kim both knew it would mean a lot more work than play. After 6 weeks, it was time to head for home. The old owl still lived in the hollow tree. Outwardly, at least, nothing had changed. Except for Nosey. For one thing, he'd done quite a bit of growing. And for another, he'd gotten used to sleeping nights instead of days. Although day, as far as he was concerned, started just slightly ahead of sunrise.
Good morning, Nosey. Go on and wake up Dad.
Unlike Kim, Ben, by nature, was a late sleeper, and it usually took more than just a gentle nudge to wake him up.
Morning, Nosey.
Come and get it, Nosey. Nosey sure makes a good alarm clock.
Yeah, but you can't turn him off. And he works 7 days a week.
Once breakfast was over, Nosey always got the day underway by investigating the first available open cupboard.
I'm going in town, Kim. Get some groceries, pick up the mail.
Don't forget food for Nosey.
It's on the list.
Oh, Nosey! Come on, better clean you up.
So Nosey was in for a whole new experience, a bath.
Bye, Kim.
Bye, Dad.
Well, all the bath seemed to have done was to shrink him 2 sizes. But after an hour in the desert sun, Nosey was back to his old self again. Kim made a habit of taking him for long walks in the desert. It seems there's a conservation law against keeping a wild skunk as a pet, so Nosey had to be free to leave if he wanted. But to survive, he would have to be used to the out-of-doors. Usually, though, he was happy enough just to stick around Kim and live up to his name by nosing around the territory.
Don't go too far.
Well, right now, Nosey was about to learn one of the cruel facts of skunk life. Skunks tend to be unpopular with almost everybody. At the moment, everything seemed to be quiet, but it was just the calm before the storm. It all started when Kim, or rather Kim's lunch, caught the eye of a hungry bobcat. About the same time, Kim noticed the red-tailed hawk. She knew red-tails consider skunks fair prey, and this one was sure after something.
Nosey? Nosey! Nosey!
What Kim couldn't know was that the hawk had been after the rabbit, and that Nosey was looking for her. But where he'd left her, he found the bobcat. The cat's hunger pangs almost proved his undoing, but only almost. Luckily for him, skunks only use the heavy artillery as a last resort.
What's the trouble?
No trouble. We got a new client. Big oil man from Texas. Be here in a few minutes with his wife. We gotta clean this place up in a hurry. Come on, honey. Here.
A good assignment for Ben would mean the end of all their worries. And a neat-looking trailer might mean the difference between the client leaving in a hurry or actually commissioning Ben to do several paintings for his university, as his letter said he might. Naturally, Nosey did his best to help out, too.
May I borrow some paint thinner, please? Thank you.
Right on time. Where's Nosey?
You put him out.
Look, you better go find him. And keep him away from those dogs, huh?
Nosey! Nosey! Nosey!
Ben Walker?
Mr. Carmady.
Meet the Mrs. Kathy.
It's a pleasure, Mrs. Carmady.
Nosey, please. Come on.
As a matter of safety, I think we ought to put the little dogs in the trailer right away.
Safety?
Kelly, Scotty, come back here. Nosey! Nosey!
For a beginner at this kind of thing, Nosey had done a pretty good job of getting away. Seems like everyone had lost his trail, even the dogs.
Well, we'd better split up.
Nosey?
But Kim was looking in the wrong direction, and Nosey's real adventures were just about to begin. Well, he'd gotten rid of the poodles all right, but it'd be a long time before he'd try to cross that road again.
Well, come on, little fellas. Time to go home now. Oh, my. Oh. Well, no broken bones.
And they didn't catch up with the skunk.
What about him? He was a pet, wasn't he?
Yes. And I've got to find him, Dad. Nosey? Nosey? Nosey?
I'm sorry, honey.
Me too. Was Mrs. Carmody mad?
Oh, I don't think so.
Will she make trouble?
I don't think so. But one thing I want you to remember. Neither you nor Nosey did anything wrong. Okay? Now, come on, let's go.
By moonrise, Nosey was getting pretty hungry, and his search for food was taking him further and further from home. To make things worse, nobody else seemed to be having a problem. Obviously, there was food here, but first you had to catch it. Finally, he found something he thought he could handle. Or could he? It was dawn before he finally found breakfast, and someone else was already eating it. A coyote had dug up a catch of tortoise eggs. By now, Nosey's hunger was so strong that whatever he had to do to get to those eggs, he'd do it. The coyote made a good try at pretending he wasn't there, but it's pretty hard to ignore an angry skunk, even when he doesn't do a thing but just show up. There was one last problem left for Nosey. How to get inside of one of these funny round things. At last, breakfast had never tasted so good. As the first rays of the morning sun warmed the desert floor, Nosey began to search for a shady place to spend the day. That turned out to be almost as hard as finding a meal. By mid-morning, he was getting desperate until he finally found an empty tortoise burrow. Just in the natural way of things, he was going back to the nocturnal habits of his kind. Unlike Nosey, Kim had to do her hunting by day, so right from the start, she didn't really have a chance of finding him. Still, she couldn't stop worrying about him. Besides that, she was afraid they might have to leave their desert home. After all, they hadn't heard a word from the Carmadys since that one disastrous visit.
Oh, that's nice, Dad.
Well, I sort of like it myself. 2 more weeks and we'll take all these things to Santa Fe for the art show. Then we'll take a vacation. Go and visit some Indian ruins, things like that, huh?
Maybe we'll go broke.
Oh, no. Hand me the cleaner, dear, will you?
And so time passed. Every night the desert came alive with all kinds of creatures, each playing his own part in the pattern of survival. Through it all wandered Nosey, still without a home, but more and more becoming a part of the pattern. All in all, Nosey had adapted pretty well to desert life, but there were still some surprises in store for him. One afternoon, he came on a remarkable sight. Another skunk. It was a young female, and she turned out to be so friendly that neither of them saw the red-tailed hawk cruising overhead. They did see his shadow, though, and their reactions were purely instinctive. They ran in different directions. Quite by accident, Nosey found cover in a culvert that passed under the road. So it worked out to be more than just a lucky escape. Nosey didn't know it yet, but he was on his way home. It was Friday afternoon, the eve of the art show, and Ben and Kim were loading the station wagon for an early start the next morning. Kim should have been excited, but her heart just wasn't in it. Even though she knew wild animals belonged in the wild, she still couldn't help missing Nosey and worrying about what had become of him. It was only a little later that Nosey found himself in strangely familiar surroundings. Memories he'd almost lost came flooding back. Memories of warmth and affection. So Nosey had finally been forced to use his ultimate weapon, and he couldn't have picked a worse spot to do it, right in the middle of Ben's paintings. Well, the art show was out for sure, unless they could deodorize the paintings in a hurry. Soap and water didn't make a dent in it. Tomato juice was a little better, but still not good enough. Apparently, the only thing that was going to work was fresh air, sunlight, and time. For a few days after that, things got back to normal. Though, of course, both Kim and Ben knew it wasn't really normal. They were going to have to leave the desert. It was the Carmadys, but what could they want?
Hello, Walker.
Mr. Carmody.
This time, Mrs. Carmody kept the dogs in the car.
When you weren't at the art show, I thought I might drop by and see if you'd hit some kind of trouble.
Yes, I did. Or it hit me.
Your backyard's an odd place for a one-man exhibit.
Oh, that's a long story.
Well, Ben's long story was about to get a little longer. The car motor had been left on to run the air conditioning, and the rest was just about inevitable. It had taken quite a bit of doing, but the dogs finally got what they wanted at the start, namely out. And Kim got that awful feeling that the roof was about to fall in. Well, this time Nosey knew exactly how to handle trouble, skunk fashion.
Well, at least you had a good supply of tomato juice.
Well, let's see if it works.
Walker, in spite of all these reoccurring disasters, I still think you're the best man to do those canvases. You still want to do them?
Very much so.
Okay, I'll make out a check just to get things started. Now, come on, little fellas. Let's go show you to your mama.
Well, it had been quite a day. But then it had been quite a summer, for that matter. And as long as Nosey was around, Kim figured there were a lot of surprises yet to come. Of course, it could be he'd disappear again someday. But that's what you had to expect when you had a wild animal for a friend. The main thing was, she knew he could take care of himself now. And that was the most important thing of all. As a matter of fact, she wouldn't have had him any other way.